Hey, you, welcome back to the channel. And guys, today we want to talk about Krypton, the anticipated television show about Superman's home planet. And guys, I got to say right off a few things. One, this will be a spoiler-filled review. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, please go watch the episode, then come back. We can talk about it. And that this is an excellent TV show. The production value is awesome. This is the work of David S. Goyer. Same connection with Zack Snyder from the Superman movie, the Man of Steel movie. And although I didn't care much for the Krypton, the world of Krypton depicted in the Man of Steel movie, I do like this depiction of it a great deal. And that is because besides just being this excellent, having this excellent production value that it has, it's very much, it seems very much more relevant with a lot of the incarnations of Superman that has been seen thus far, whether it be in the comics and various things like that. But right off, what this story is about, obviously it's about Seg-EL, Superman's grandfather. So it does take place about 200 years before the events of Superman as we understand them. It's a lot going on in the political landscape of Krypton at this time. It's in a lot of there's a lot of changes that have been happened to Krypton. It's a lot of political upheaval, and a lot of it has to do with the structure of Krypton. Krypton, for the most part, ran as a scientocracy in many incarnations of the Superman mythos. But in this is a particular event in history where Krypton is pretty much run as a theocracy, and that is because the dominating religion on Krypton, the worship of the red sun god Ra, has this prophet that is known as the voice of Ra, and he is basically running. He's basically running Krypton, and because of this, there are certain things that are seen as heresy, which in part has to do with where Val-El comes into it, who's actually the grandfather of Seg-EL, or the grandfather of Superman's grandfather. Okay, so Val-El is basically accused of heresy, and he is executed in a trial, as we get to see in pretty much the opening scene. And this is due to the idea that in the religion of Ra, Krypton is seen kind of as the center of the universe. This is a very similar argument what we got with the papacy that at the time pretty much controlled the world, and Galileo, and a lot of the other men on the verge of scientific discovery back in those days who fought to have these discoveries, people made aware of them, and there was going to be all this political upheaval. So where our story gets going, obviously, is when Seg-EL meets Adam Strange. At this point, Seg-EL's been ostracized, his entire family, the entire house of El, from the noble houses of Krypton because of the actions of Val-El, type of sins of the father type situation. So because of that, life is tough on Krypton for them. They don't have the luxuries and comforts of that of a noble house like they had before. So Seg-EL grows up in a harsh environment, a troubled environment. But one day, as we got to see, Adam Strange meets up with him. Now, Adam Strange is a DC character. Adam Strange, it has a similar story to Superman in reverse, whereas he's a human being who becomes a hero on other planets by the use of the Zeta Beam. He's time traveling around the Krypton, and I'm not sure if he's using the Zeta Beam. I don't think he is, but he's trying desperately to convince Seg-EL that not only is Krypton in danger, but his lineage is in danger of one of the universe's greatest heroes being destroyed by Brainiac. And all of these are discoveries of Val-El early on, which is being suppressed by the Kryptonian government. Now, what's very interesting, what I found just kind of a treat too, and I like the little tidbits of giving us a little history of how kind of why Superman wears his the costume he wears, the origins of the Fortress of Solitude. Now, I'm not exactly sure if this comes from the comic books, but in this production, you can see right off that Val-El is wearing what looks similar to what Superman wears, in the present day of the comics, or in their future. And that is kind of the red cape with the House of El crest on the back, kind of blue clothing, the blue and the red. And this, I guess, would be just, everyday, normal wear, for Val-El, or, what they wear on Krypton. So there seems to be a great inspiration from Val-El to Kal-El or Superman, and then also we get to understand the importance of what the Fortress of Solitude was. The Fortress of Solitude was a place where Val-El was able to conduct his work, and in privacy from the Kryptonian government, so that he wouldn't, he could do it without them interfering with him. And he kind of doing it in solitude. And that same idea is passed on to Superman and the technology of the Fortress of Solitude. But not only that, but all of the scientific discoveries of Val-El, scientific discoveries of, the generations on, even Seg-EL, as we got to learn early on that Seg-EL is kind of on a course of redemption, himself personally, not his entire family, but due to the fact he saves the voice of Ra, which is this prophet of Ra, who's pretty much running the government at this point in like a theocracy. It's from explosion from group of terrorists. I believe they may be called Black Zero. And they're this terrorist organization that's been used, it looks like, in somewhere in the Superman mythos on several occasions. But I found all that excellent. Everything looks great. The storyline was great. The actors were well done. Now, these actors are familiar for me. I've seen them in several productions, from Caprica to Da Vinci. And that's very interesting because Da Vinci is a production as well from David S. Goyer, who worked on Man of Steel, who came up with the idea of the show here and wrote for the show. But he's also kind of using a lot of his actors from Da Vinci in here, and the Florentine leader of the De Medici family and Da Vinci, a show that I like to watch. I found very interesting. I think it may have run 3 seasons on the Stars Network. But anyway, he is playing like the lead magistrate in the Kryptonian government, who kind of carries out the wishes of the voice of Ra. And so he's a good actor, and as soon as I saw him, I knew that the show was going to be very good, with him in there. But in addition to that, the show goes on to show, just similar to the comics, the different guilds of Kryptonian society, where they have this kind of breakdown of the military guild, you have the scientific guild, and then you have the lawmaking guild, right? And I just like how they did that. Very similar to the comic books. I like this version of Krypton probably better than any version I've seen so far. And I thought it worked very well. So the acting was all on par. Uh, what's also going to be very interesting and I think great going forward is the various characters that are going to be introduced that are from DC characters. A lot of names are popping up where we might see. Obviously, we've already gotten Adam Strange from the get go. Probably might get to see him suit up, and I think that would be awesome if we do get to see him suit up. But tying them to the Man of Steel movies, if they want to say that this is a direct prequel in line with Man of Steel, we saw some similar things in as part of the story. The Genesis Chamber, for instance, Genesis Chamber. We got to see when Seg-EL was bonded to the magistrate's daughter that they can pretty much see the entire lifespan of their child or their children before they're even born, what they're going to do. And you can already see some rebellion in Seg-EL that that's not the type of world that they think they should be living in. And the Kryptonian society looks at this as a more efficient way to run society. But you can already see that kind of that freedom of choice thing permeating within the El family, from Seg-EL to his mother and father to Val-EL to Jor-EL, and to of course, we get Superman as a product of free will in this area, freedom of choice to try to be whomever and whatever they wish to be. A romance between Zod and El. That's something that I found very interesting in the show as well. That's something that these two houses seeming to be the greatest adversaries of each other on Krypton. In many stories, they've started off and a very good place. With Seg-EL, Superman's grandfather, and Lita Zod here, they have this type of love story, which looks like it might turn into some type of triangle going. And then as you get the future versions of Superman, where you have friendships between Jor-El and Zod, and then you later even have a Zod and Superman trying their very best to be friends. You got that in Man of Steel. You also got that in Smallville, with it still ending up on this devastating course that they end up on. So just a great show, guys. If you haven't watched it yet, if you've been kind of disappointed with DC on the silver screen, give Krypton a shot. I found it to be an excellent show. They seem to have done everything right from the beginning. They've done good on the budget, great on the acting, great on the writing. And I was just pulled in from the beginning, just intrigued to see connections between Krypton and Superman. And it's going to be very exciting to see what characters we get to see, because remember, Krypton is in outer space, and there's a lot of other civilizations that they could come in contact with throughout this series that I think will be quite interesting to see. And I think that's going to be awesome. So, guys, I'm going to keep doing a review on this show, Krypton. Let me know what you thought about the show, Krypton, so far in this episode 1. And if you're going to keep watching it, guys, if you like content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe. And until next time, take care.